I'm Liz Truss, but with the wrong gender. And I've got these two experts on cuisine who I admire tremendously. Vineet, Bhatia at the back, who of course has transformed what he calls as modern Indian cuisine globally. So let's give him a big hand, Vineet.
Thank you.
If winter comes, can spring be far behind? I'm so Rashima must be lurking somewhere in the background, right? So Rashima, if you're there, hello.
She is in another room right now, so I'm alone, all by myself.
And then, of course, I have the evergreen and wonderful Kunal, who is one of my favorite chefs, and our protagonist this evening in person. All right, and we're going to miss Ranveer. Now, since we are now assuming a position of Liz Truss, and we are in and UK seems to be the country in motion, and I was speaking lately at one session, and I spoke for so long that people started clapping at the end of the session, and I thought I spoke brilliantly, but actually I spoke too much. They were so happy that I shut up that they were clapping. So I've decided that I will not speak, and therefore the best format that I can think through is an Oxonian format. The Oxonian format, and if you've seen Shashi Tharoor do Oxonian format, it means either you're for the motion or you're against the motion, right? So the motion here, Kunal, Vineet, is that what is the impact of inventive modern cuisine on the global landscape for Indian fare? Okay, and so I'll repeat that: the impact of inventive modern cuisine on the global landscape for Indian fare. Now, are you with the motion or are you against the motion? I'm assuming, and assumptions become a self-fulfilling prophecy, that Vineet is for the motion and Kunal is against the motion.
Not entirely.
Oh, what a pity.
Yeah. I mean, I can levitate on both sides and give pointers on both sides just to balance.
Fair enough. All right. So I just have two examples, or two or three examples of what has happened in the past. And now, in the 60s and 70s, when none of you were born, there was, in the Indian art scene, there were 5 or 6 very iconic artists. Okay, there's Badal Sarkar, either the Bengal school, or there was the Baroda school, there was the Kangra school and the Bisholi school, and there was all very stratified, right? And of course, the princess of that period was Amrita Shergill, who incidentally is one of the greatest Indian artists in the world, and her large collection is currently entombed at the National Gallery of Modern Art. My claim to fame is that I own her studio in Simla, and that's my bragging rights. But any artist who came to change was judged by those paradigms, that either you had to be Bengal school, etc., etc., etc. So a group of young people got together and made what they call the progressive Indian art movement. Okay, and they were people like M.F. Hussain, Krishan Khanna, Raza, and so on and so forth, and the rest, Tayyab Mehta, and the rest, as you know, is history. All right, Tayyab Mehta recently sold for 5.5 crores. Mr. Hussain sells for, well, Bharat by about 25-30 crores. So they completely changed the turf of Indian art, right? Nobody talks about the Bengal school and the Bisholi school and the Patiala school. They now speak of the artists. So that's the good news. The bad news was when India and Pakistan used to play hockey, either India won or Pakistan won. Then, of course, the Europeans who were losing changed the turf, literally and metaphorically, which means that they introduced the AstroTurf. Now, once they changed the turf, neither India won, neither Pakistan won. Guess who won hockey? The Germans won, or the English won, or whoever else won, because they had completely changed the turf. Now, the argument against that is that, come on, guys, shape up. You know, if they've changed the turf, then change the way you play your hockey. All right? But we are still struggling a little bit. The third point here, Kunal, and since you're the only human protagonists here, and the rest are all holograms. Are you a hologram, Vineet? Hello.
I am. Looks like.
Lots of our food gets lost in translation. So I used to go with the government of India to Davos year after year after year. And, and Manjeet is here with me, Manjeet, don't sleep, listen to me, all right? Can you hear me, Manjeet? Yeah, okay. So we complicate our food. And if you work for ITC, like for the year that I have worked, we complicate it even further. Now, why will we complicate the food? So that Farhad Jamal doesn't copy our food. So we complicated Arabic names, Persian names, names that are irrelevant names. Now, for instance, why should there be something known as Kohe Avan? Right. You understand? It sounds like the Kohinoor. It's actually just a Rogan Josh. But anyhow, a lot of our food got lost in translation. किसी को समझ आ नहीं रही है. जब when they came back to a restaurant, वो कहते भी हम उस 22 तारीख को आए थे, एक काला आदमी मिला था, उसने हमको एक गोरा खाना खिलाया था. तो a lot of the food just gets lost. And then the Bangladeshi arrived and he said, okay, उस गोरा भी ले आया, काला भी ले आया, उसने अपना खाना बनाया, and therefore our food became what we call as very transactional. All right. So it became commoditized. So the butter chicken became commoditized. Everything became commoditized. Then I think the other point was plating, right? That did the Western style of plating, was it ingenious and was it more attractive for the world to eat that food? I mean, or are we still very attracted to this platter to plate or tunga to plate? I'm not very sure, but that's a discussion that both Vineet and then the third, the next and almost the last one is that the hegemony of the Punjabi garam masala. The Punjabi refugees imposed garam masala on the entire universe. MDH. They mass produced garam masala in their factories and they put it on everybody's shelf. Today, the garam masala is everywhere. So I met the Turkish ambassador the other day, Farhad, haplessly. He said, I love India. I said, thank you, Excellency. He said, I have one simple question. Why does your food all taste the same? It's because of the garam masala. All right. Pungency, as Manjeet Gill will define, should we combine chili and with spices? Or should we define spices and chili separately? So is pungency by the power of 2, which means isn't all Indian food modern Indian food? Because after all, it is the Portuguese who introduced chili to India, right? And the potato and the tomato. So isn't all our food modern Indian food? Anyway, that's a debate which we'll do next year. Then I'll tell you what the other trick is, and this is where Vineet is the clever guy. Okay, none of their food is replicable at home. Now, if Vineet comes on television, which of course he comes quite often, and I love Vineet a lot, is that when he comes and does a demo on the food, he speaks very eloquently. But let me tell you, I don't know anybody who can replicate his food on their table. You try and copy their food. Okay. However, on the other hand, Kunal, when he does his food shows on television, we all love the way he styles it. So simple, right? So modern Indian scientists have made it so complex that it's almost difficult to copy their food. Anyway, I've already spoken this too much. I have now decided that I shall become Liz Truss, and for that I have got a nice mask, and I will wear this mask and shut up. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am like this Liz Truss now. Okay. And you guys have to debate. So that we come back to the question: impact of inventive modern cuisine on global landscape for Indian fare. For the motion, Vineet, for the motion?
Yes, all in for it.
Shall we ask Vineet to go before?
Yes, please.
Okay, because he's the tough one.
Yes.
Okay, Vineet, over to you.
Thank you. Gautam, you are absolutely fantastic. Love what you do. Love the way you are. Please never change. Am I clear? Am I loud enough?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I will actually vouch what Kunal said earlier, that I am for and against it at the same time, both. I'm more for it than against it. And the reason why I'm for it, because you got to realize that when I actually left India in 93 and moved to London to cook, what I saw being done in UK in those days was nothing what was being served back in India, in either Bombay or Delhi or in Chennai. It was something, a very different kind of a version of Indian Khana, which I'd never seen. You had like 120 items on the menu, and none of them were really representing India at all. So when I started doing things which are very classic, like a proper chicken tikka or a shami kebab or a shikampuri kebab, guests literally should laugh at me and say, "This is not Indian Khana, what you're doing." So I could not really even call a Rogan Josh or Rogan Josh, because the Rogan Josh way back in the early 90s in London was basically 1 inch of oil with some capsicum chunks, some tomato ke chunks, and some pyaz and patli gravy. And that is not really a Rogan Josh. And you got things like dhansa, which had no vegetables in them, for example. So when I still remember, I made the very first thing I ever did there was a gajar ka halwa, a very classic way of making gajar ka halwa, and I served it hot or garam to the guest. If I properly sent back to the kitchen and said, your chef does not know how to make gajar ka halwa, because the gajar ka halwa is supposed to be served ice cold in the shape of a cube, is because 99.9% of restaurants in those days in London were buying gajar ka halwa ready-made from a market, taking it from a dabba, putting it into a bowl and serving to the guest without even warming it up. So, you are up against those kind of things. The second thing I remember making was, like you said, koi avad. So I made a lamb shank Rogan Josh, nalli. And the first comment came back from a guest saying, "We are not dogs. We don't eat food on the bone." So no, you are up against an audience who is so not used to eating things the way we eat back in India. So what do? Do I leave and go back, or do I stand up and fight against it? So I adopted a way of trying to put the food, but not calling it the authentic name. So my Rogan Josh became a slow cooked shank of lamb with North Indian spices, for example. Or the butter chicken became a chicken tikka simmered in a buttery tomato sauce with some kasturi methi or fenugreek leaves. So the tonation and the words on the menu were not classic as what you get back in India or what was being served. So there was no like for like comparison. Now, when you start putting food differently or trying to sound it a bit differently, what I was to also do is, at that stage in the early 90s, was try and make it a little more sundar. Try and give it some more respect. Who knew in those days that trying to make the food look more elegant, taking off all the oils and the fats around the plate and trying to make it look, dressing it up nicely, will then snowball into something so big, which is now probably termed as modern Indian Khana or progressive Indian Khana. But that was not the idea. The idea at that stage was purely to survive and make a living. And if you look at it now, I mean, that has become so big that it has actually showcased Indian food around the world to a global audience. So a lot of people around the world get to see Indian food in a very different avatar. And you also feed a lot of different kind of palates, global palates. A lot of people from around the world who are not used to actually having Indian food most of the times get to see Indian food in a different kind of a avatar. But we always say, if you eat that food with your eyes closed, is India on your palate. That swad should always remain. The authenticity of your flavors, the cooking techniques are all very authentic. It is the only thing which we change is we try and use as much of local proteins we can. The spices all literally come from India. So now going back to your topic I was saying about spices and the chili, piquancy is something else. Pungency is something else. Our food is about flavors. It's about swad. It's about our masalas. It's about our blends. And that is what makes our food more interesting than anybody else. And that is our strong point for Indian Khana. That we can never take away. So the use of spice, and there is not just one garam masala. In a kitchen, probably you'll have 12 or 14 different spice powders you add for different dishes, just to make sure that the flavors are quite clear and quite pronounced. What that does is, for your audience who comes to eat, they get a variety of food but does not taste the same. So yeah, it does become a bit complex in the kitchen because you're doing 10 times more work, but the end result is it is your guests who come to eat and what they enjoy.
That's it. I think what Vineet has articulated. Let me first give him credit again for having pioneered this entire crossover, right? So once again, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Vineet Bhatia, who pioneered, was brave, and I know his story, okay? So we've had a confessional. I'm not a Catholic, but we had a confessional at the Bukhara restaurant, Vineet, if you remember, off the record.
Yes, I do.
And as a good priest now, because I'm distrust, I will never reveal that information. But I do appreciate your candidness and your the background. So I think what he's done and they've done, and I think Rashma and Vineet are a team. What they've done globally, and now back to their roots in Oberoi, at the Oberoi at Mumbai, right? And of course in Dubai, and then in Zurich and wherever else they've gone. I think they've done India proud, and now with the Indian diaspora doing so well in the United Kingdom, I think the next big catering at 10 Downing Street is going to be Vineet. Is that what you're going to be doing soon, shortly, you think?
I mean, I am the culinary ambassador for UK government worldwide, so I do represent both the countries. I'm also part of Mr. Modi's Living Bridge thing. So I represent both, and they're both very close to my heart.
Proud of you, really proud of you. On that very happy note, Kunal, since you are sitting on the fence, all right, and you want to take credit for everything?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Yep. So there are a couple of things, which I would like to set straight, which if you disagree, you can say you disagree. For the longest time, Indian food in India and outside India had been not the kind of cuisine one was ready to pay a top dollar. Whether you are a Desi Indian eating Desi food, or whether you are a non-Desi or a Firangi eating Indian food, whether in India or outside India. For the longest time, Indian food in India has been, because we are going out with my family, mummy papa hain, let's take them to an Indian restaurant because unko kuch aur samajh nahi aayega. They will get their kind of food. There will be that classic music, unke filmi gaane, dad would love it, mom would love it, mere zore jabi chalega, and they will all be happy. So we've all grown and seen those kind of Indian restaurants, which have always been the second choice, and you're not ready to pay a premium for those restaurants. And it took a certain time and certain caliber of people to come together to change that. And if I can say, let's say Bukhara at a certain point broke that ceiling for classic Indian food and put Indian food in India on the map. Ke bhai, agar aapko good Indian or the best Indian you want to eat, Bukhara is the place, or Dampuk is the place, and likewise. Similarly, outside of India also, especially, let's say, chef, correct me if I'm wrong, that in UK for the longest time, post your parties and your booze parties at a bar, you would look for a curry house where you would get your fix of curry and rice or roti, and that would be cheap, inexpensive, because you're so drunk, it doesn't matter what you're eating. It tastes nice and spicy, it is Indian, it doesn't matter whether it's Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Indian, it all comes under Indian. So where certain restaurants broke that ceiling, I remember I was still, I think, possibly training in same hotel that we're sitting in. And I heard there is some chef called Vineet Bhatia, which unko Michelin star mila hai, unko award mila hai. That was the first time I had heard of Chef Vineet Bhatia. I hadn't met you then, chef. And I was so inquisitive. Who is he? What is he doing? What are his menus? How does he do his food? And the first time I saw Indian food being plated, I was like flabbergasted. Mela, how can you do that? Sauce ऐसे डाल रही है? नहीं, वो तो bowl में होता है. नहीं, ये तो ऐसे करते हैं. ये ऐसे थोड़ी ना कर सकते हैं. But उन्होंने किया. So for a lot of chefs, a lot of people also, when I say not chefs, but people who go to the restaurants, they saw a different version of the food. Now, if you look on the hindsight, both work beautifully in today's time. But I think it took the modern Indian route for people to voice out their opinion कि ये अच्छा है बुरा है, कि ये कर सकते हैं नहीं कर सकते. अगर किसी शेफ ने गोवन इन करी बनाई दिल्ली के अंदर and some Goan will come and say, this is trash. No, this is not how Goan curry is made. Till the time somebody didn't try out a different way of doing Indian food, we never had any voice who would tell us whether it was right or wrong. The documentation of Indian food never happened. It happened in behind closed doors in certain locations or books or places or certain people where you would have to have access for that knowledge in order to get it. Now it's open. So a lot of technology, a lot of openness, a lot of modern Indian food derived that will and that interest in the common man to say that, hey, I have an opinion about it and I'd like to voice it. And that kind of came back and said, अगर ये ऐसे नहीं होता तो कैसे होता है? Oh, there's a restaurant doing it, right? Here is the location, here's the pin, here's the tag. So both have gone hand in hand, and till the time, if I can speak very plainly, we sometimes need the outside community or outsiders or the Farangis to come and congratulate us. Oh, brilliant. Garlic naan you do. Oh my God. Oh, the butter chicken. Oh, the XYZ. For us to appreciate. Of course, yeah, this is Indian. Yeah. Hamare yahan pe banta. So we have that kind of seeking that acceptance, which now I can proudly say the chefs boldly stand within India, outside of India, and do what their thought process or their concept or their heart says, nahi, I want to do an XYZ plus XYZ, like a butter chicken, which is a different version of butter chicken. Let's say what chef has done, what Gagan has done, is just put Indian food onto a world map, which also makes people inquisitive. The world inquisitive, if this is the modern version, what is the classic I'd like to try? So I think one is helping the other, and that's the continuous loop that kind of helps all of us to make better food, better hospitality, better service, better product. And that's why you see the scalability of restaurants, of food, or food chains, or the demand is on a constant rise in different forms. So what do you have to say? I mean, do I make sense?
I'm Liz Truss.
I think if I can just butt in here right now, I think Kunal is 100% right on that. I think what has happened is that there is space for everyone, and that is the most important part. I think all the chefs who are within India and also internationally, I think the common goal is to actually expose Indian cuisine at every level. It doesn't have to be always fine dining and 200 pounds a head. You can also get a very good meal for 500 rupees, 600 rupees if you want to. It is how you construct your meal. It opens up opportunities for everyone to then progress and to look at it. And sadly, it is somebody from outside who has to bring the stuff back to India to showcase it to you. I remember when I first opened up in Zia in Mumbai, almost 13 years back, everybody says, are you going to try and teach us how to cook? And I said, no. It is already there. And I still remember one more thing Mr. Oberoi said is, what will you do different here? And I said, Mr. Oberoi, if you want me to make butter chicken and maki dal, you better get somebody from Khyber in Kalagoda, Mumbai, because they do a fantastic job. But if you want someone to come and make a butter chicken ka ice cream and a chicken tikka made of maki dal, then I'm your guy. But the flavors are exactly as what you grow up eating within India. That should never change. I think what has also happened is regional cuisine has really come to forefront now, which I'm so happy about, because there's so much of food within India, in parts of India which have never been really showcased nicely. There is plenty of cuisine from the eastern part of India. You go to Calcutta, you go to Odia, you go down to the south, you got some amazing cuisine. It doesn't always have to be North Indian Punjabi khana. I mean, that has been the forte for most restaurants around the world. But there are a lot of people now, if you look at Shiriji sitting in California, or you have somebody else doing classic cuisines of various parts. You got a chef in New York has got a South Indian restaurant has got an award for now. That is fantastic. This is what you need. This is what has done. So being the first guy to have got the star way back in 2001, which actually you break the glass ceiling for everyone to then rise forward. And that I think has been the biggest exposure, I would say, for Desi Khana. And I still say Indian food is a sleeping giant. It is awakening still. There is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be showcased, and it is on the right path. And there is plenty of options at all price levels.
I agree.
Yeah. So, okay. So I have now resigned as Liz Truss. So what are my views on this? So for most of my life, I've been told that, look, we need to follow tradition. Okay. So when I met Vineet for the first time, and uh, we had a dialogue, and actually I was very anxious to bring him on board to try and create a between you and me. It took me about 25 years to get sushi into ITC hotels. I can speak now. I'm a shareholder, not an employee. Vineet, it took me 25 years to introduce sushi because each time I said sushi, I'd get a slap on my face. All right. And then it took me another 10 years to open a Japanese restaurant. Okay, so we were taught that look, tradition is important, and for a very good reason, because we had our job essentially was to formate a tradition, since, as Kunal rightly said, none of this was culinarily written, right? We love the oral tradition, right? And remember that if you look at the hegemony of the Indian master chef, and I have been a victim of that. Manjeet is there and Manisha is there. Our master chefs had pudiyas. Okay. Now, whether the pudiya had any meaning or they were meaningless, I don't know. But Farad, they would quietly go and put a pudiya and let it be known to the whole world and their auntie that they were putting a pudiya. All right. And everybody, wah, 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 kya khana hai? Except that what happened was, and Vineet, this is interesting because we've had this conversation before, that the genesis of what we call traditional Indian food had its basis on the first corporate chef of ITC hotels, which you may not know was a French chef, Roger Moncu. Roger Moncu enunciated, he came from the Ashoka. Okay. And yeah,
Good for him.
yes, good. Well, not so good for the Ashoka. But in those days when we were getting chefs from everywhere, and I think Manjeet had joined then or just after that. I was a management trainee at that time, prancing all over the place, and they used to make me dish out food for the cooks. But I realized at that time that what Roger Monco was doing was he was illustrating the fundamentals of French cuisine, and people were watching. They were trying to understand what a roux is, they were understanding what a Jew is, and he taught them how to strain food, right? Now, young chefs at that time, Manjeet included, were looking at him and emulating. So a lot of the genesis of, so there was typically let's say Mayur Rogan Josh, the first Rogan Josh that made its appearance at the ITC Maurya, and I was a precocious young manager those days, was a strained gravy. They weren't spending 1 hour in bonoing the pyaz. नहीं तो वो तो टाइम नहीं लगाता था, वो तो ब्लांच करके अपना खाना वाना बना के स्ट्रेन करके लगा देता था। और यहाँ पर जो दुनिया भर के लगे थे वो अपने भुनते रहते थे। हमको कहा गया भी भुनते रहो जी, वो भी भुनते वो थक गए, टूट गए सब। एंड द प्रॉब्लम वाज मैनेजमेंट ट्रेनिंग्स वो टोल्ड कि तुसी करना है पुन्ना सा, तो ऐसे ही भुनते रहे मर गए ऐसे थे, वी वोंट सीरियसली। And and then Roger Monco taught them the other way. So things were changing, but that knowledge was kept very secretive. Then one day, many years later, I moved out of Maurya to corporate office, and we were doing R&D at that time. And I and Manisha were having a chat, and I think it was Ranveer who spoke, who I miss visiting Delhi. So one of his sessions, and I have a blog when I was researched, that somebody told me about Lazzatul Tam. Lazzatul. It means with the art of taste or whatever it means. And then on Amazon, I found it. All right. And I bought 2 or 3 packets and I gave it to Manisha. Is Manisha there somewhere? Manisha Bhatia, hello, good to see you again. So I said, तू ऐसा कर, ये पैकेट रख ले और उसकी पुड़िया जो है उसको बोल पुड़िया डाल दे और ये भी डाल, देखते हैं ब्लाइंड टेस्टिंग में क्या होगा. So we used that Lazzat-e-Tam, and Sadaf, the other gentleman, I won't give him his name because uski value niche ho jayegi. We don't want the market value to go down. And we found that the taste ours was better. No. The one that we got on Amazon, the damn taste was better.
Yeah.
So that's the day I said, yeah, enough is enough. With all this hegemony has to change. That's the way we changed our turf, right? And I told Manjeet, I said, Manjeet, And I told Manisha that all the sous chefs will now become interns in all these great kitchens, not the karigars. We used to get karigars, and remember that जो master chef होते हैं, Vineet, this is interesting. वो कड़छी जो है अपने बेटे को ही देते हैं, समझ गए? बेटे को दे देंगे, नवासे को दे देंगे, nephew को दे देंगे. Farhad, you come from a very very famous and traditional family. You know what I'm talking about, And so therefore it's like Hakim and Ved. They would teach वो पुड़ियाँ जो हैं वो. तो हमने क्या किया? We took this brand of educated, smart young chefs, and we said, you guys, you get into it and don't get pretty scared. Let's break this monopoly. And look at and history. I'm telling you, and today what you have today, and thanks to Manjeet and Manisha, these brands are made for breaking. The Bukhara stands tall. I mean, it's like one of the turnover of a luxury hotel in India, all right? And okay, now I'm not saying that it's the greatest restaurant. We've also stopped there. Not that we've. Manisha, हम भी तो रुक गए ना. हमने भी तो कोई और brand ही बनाए. So that's not the point. But when we did, we took inspiration from Vineet, and we did a modern restaurant in Chennai. I can never pronounce the name. What is it, Manisha? It's
Avartana.
That is correct. People consider it as one of the greatest chefs, greatest restaurants in the world, and our inspiration was Vineet. And when I have to share, if I could, and I could bring a guest chef apart from Vineet, I would bring Kunal, because Kunal has democratized Indian food to the whole universe. His simple, lucid lessons, democracy at work. हम छुपाते हैं, ये दिखाता है. हम दबा के रखते हैं, ये लोगों को सिखाता है. This is democracy at work. Okay, now it's taken us a little while, and we were under a lot of strictures, by the way. If I ever gave a recipe out in ITC hotels, I would have been rapped on my knuckles. Manisha, what I mean. So as luck would have it, our boss Habib Rahman, who we love greatly, he went and published a book. By the way, he was also rapped on his knuckles for that. It was called 101 Kebabs. All right. And I was sent to Germany to launch it. Okay. Manjeet was there with me. And we were so scared, because our chairman had told us कि भाई ये तो जाओ अपना काम करके आओ, launch मत करना, announce करके आओ, आपको 20 कॉपी है, 20 कॉपी वापस ले आना. मेरे से गलती से 5 कॉपी गुम गई, पता नहीं कहाँ रह गई, मुझे तो समझ नहीं आई कहाँ गई. लेकिन मैं वो कॉपी ले आया. लेकिन थोड़ी देर के बाद मैंने कहा भी बेंचमार्क तो हो गया. तो जिस दिन हमको किसी ने कहा भी किसी का फोन, भाई कितने लोग फोन करते हैं, ये भी एक रेसिपी तो दे दो आप. वीर सांघवी मगर पड़ा रहता है या सिकंदर ईरान की रेसिपी दे दो, हम कितना झूठ बोले बताओ. तो फॉर्चुनेटली वो रहमान साहब की किताब में सारी 101 रेसिपीज हैं. हम उसमें से चूज करके दे देते थे. कोई हमको मगर कहता था कहाँ से दिए तूने, मैं किताब तो आपने छापी है भाई.
Good one.
So we still haven't. अभी भी हम नकाब में हैं, बेनकाब नहीं हुए. विनीत और कुणाल बेनकाब हैं, इन्होंने अपना निकाब निकाल दिया. ये सिखाते हैं.
In fact, if I can say something, I think the only way you can grow is by sharing. And I left India when I was 20. When I left India, I was 24 years old. I didn't have enough knowledge in my mind, although I had done a short stint for 6-7 years and worked my butts off. So whatever I had gained and learned was purely by asking questions, and there was pre-Google days, and learned it on the job. So when I actually went in there, I used to do things which I found correct within myself because my foundation was so strong. So if you ask me, is my food authentic and classic? I would say in terms of flavor and spice, yes. But it is not what you probably get everywhere, or it's not very common. So thinking process was quite different because they were youngest generation at that stage. If you look at it now, the new generation is coming up, they have got so much of access on the internet that literally it's at the fingertips. Knowledge is there instantly. It is how you utilize it. Sadly, the celebrity status is such that everybody wants to become a super chef in literally a matter of 2 years' time, wants to become an exec chef. It doesn't happen. It takes a long grind to get your basics right and then to understand and then have your own style. So no, right up to the age of 27, 28, you are like a sponge. You are literally absorbing information. You're soaking in knowledge. And that knowledge becomes part of you. And that is what you take forward from here. And that makes it very much yours.
Well said. I mean, that's a big hand for Vineet Bhatia. Yes, right. And so again, I'm saying, I think, so sorry, I spoke a little more like Liz Truss, and that's why I'm going to get sacked. But I think what Vineet and Kunal have done is they've democratized in their own way the knowledge sharing. Okay. Manjeet, I know, is doing it at his new knowledge center we set up in Gurgaon. Manjeet, congratulations once again. I think, let's give a big hand to Manjeet Gill for having, So, but as I said, we still have paradigms. We still, I don't know, at least I think many of the structured chains still are not willing to share. Okay. They're still willing to, they're still hesitant. They think it's, because I think what's happened today is that, it's too late not to share because it's really about the ability, right? Kunal, am I right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put you on the mat now, Vineet. Now I've been nice to you. Okay. But now, because I love your specs, by the way, your nice goggles, they keep changing and they're becoming sexier each year. I'm going to put you on the map. Okay. What is, now you can't be parochial and you can't name your own restaurants. Okay. I love Zia. So that matter is over. What is your most favorite restaurant in India?
Oh, my favorite restaurant in India. Oh, I would still say I'm very biased towards Khyber in Bombay. It is something which I've enjoyed as a kid. Okay. I really like Khyber. And so I'm a street food guy. I also love street food. Street food right from Delhi, from Kamla Nagar market, right up to the Jhujo party. I love street food.
Okay, so we've got Vineet. He's sort of unscathed. He's clever. He's gone to Khyber and he's gone to the streets. Okay, fine. Which is the restaurant that
can I also say I've also enjoyed a very good meal in one of your Sheratons in Chola, the new Avaranta. That was very nice. The modern South Indian. I really like that.
I think for that you get a brownie pound. Give him a big hand for that. And if you're an ITC shareholder, it's going up every. The price is going up. So please buy ITC shares. Anyway, good. So okay, now which is the restaurant that you hate?
No, you don't hate restaurants. I think it is all about. It is not right to point fingers and say they're good or not good. Okay, I think it's because everybody makes his own effort.
I'll be kinder. I'll be like Boris Johnson. Okay, which is the restaurant that you don't like so much?
I don't like gimmicky restaurants.
Sorry?
I don't like too much drama. I don't like gimmicky restaurants. I don't like too much of a drama. Yeah.
You don't like eating in restaurants?
Huh? I don't like restaurants which have got gimmick.
Gimmick.
Too much theater.
You don't hate gimmicky restaurant. And I agree with you. The last restaurant I went to, I won't mention the name, but I had the displeasure of going to one of these modern Indian restaurants, and the chef kept speaking. I said, why doesn't he shut up? I'm paying the money. I'm stuck there for 3.5 hours. Seriously. And all he does is that he keeps going wang, wang, wang. Anyway. All right. Okay. Thanks, Vineet, for your candidness. Okay, Mr. Young Kunal Kapur. What is your favorite restaurant?
I think Karavali in Bangalore is one restaurant that every time I go to Bangalore, I eat. They never disappoint. It's always fresh food. Also, I think because I worked there in Karavali in my training time, and they had this beautiful system of subha coconut aayega, ye curry banegi, ye banega, and towards the evening, because the restaurant is always packed, it is always sold off. Nothing goes to the deep freezer. There was no deep freezer in the kitchen. So I still respect the way that kitchen is run. The menu hasn't changed much, just tweaks here and there, and the food is fantastic every time. Fresh seafood, fresh meats, freshly made.
Well done. I've spent a lifetime trying to desecrate that Karavali. And I've been in many juries, and I've always wanted to see Dakshin, but for some reason, the damn Karavali keeps popping his head up. All right. And then, of course, obliquely, Kunal mentions he's also worked there. So he's also actually giving himself credit for it. Anyway, well done. Give it up. Okay. Apart from that, which is the restaurant that you don't like so much? Well, you don't hate, but you don't like so much.
Actually, if I go once, if I don't like, I never go there again. So, I mean, there is nothing that I have a vengeance or something that I wouldn't like. Like Chef mentioned, overly gimmicky, yes. But I think I enjoy restaurants which do things thoda hatke. I enjoy that. But sometimes, wo hatke mein na, when your basic principles of your food go out of the window, that's when that puts me off. Whether it's your cut of meat, or whether the way a certain thing is served, कि अगर फलानी चीज को अगर किसी bowl में sauce में होता है, is for a reason. If you're taking it out, make sure it's hot. If it's coming ice cold, it's no point eating it. So I think I don't like that. One of the other things which I've started seeing is that because there is so much of modernization with food, and YouTube has opened a new level of answering every query that exists in your mind. And as a chef, if you want to have a query, how do I make my meat tender? And you go online, they'll give you hundreds of ways to do it. And a lot of them are artificially flavored and enhanced and tenderized. So plainly speaking, let's say whether it's kacha papita or kachiri, has a certain function, takes a certain expertise and time to mature or tenderize the meat. Whereas there are artificial tenderizers, you put it within 2 minutes or 10 minutes, it is done, and it'll enhance your flavor and it'll do XYZ. So they already give you that base level of flavor into your food. Then me as a chef thinks, what is the purpose of having a chef spending so many hours behind the gas range and trying to hone a skill if one pudiya that you buy from the standard store and put it will do the magic. So that part, or wo na pakad mein nahi aata for most people. But as a chef, you know that it is giving you extra kick, and as a back note, there's extra saliva moving in your mouth. Oh God, there is some kind of a flavor enhancer into even your butter chicken, for that matter. Even your butter, the flavored butter that they do, it tastes good, but it's not real. It's still too unreal or farce for me to appreciate it, even though the taste is good.
Okay, so on that very
I think what happens is, if I can say something, what happens is a lot of things are done by chefs sometimes who are not really astute enough or who don't have enough strong foundations. And they try and do things off the net and try and pick things up without really understanding the sequencing or the technicality behind the dish and behind the flavors and the spices. So it's basically unbaked knowledge. And that messes things up, sadly. So you try and do modern kind of a cuisine, but not realizing that the thought process is quite different of what it is supposed to be. And without the strong foundation, you fall flat.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think I used to have a lot of discussion on all this food that is embellished. All the food that is embellished is rubbish food. Because then you can't make up your mind, because you put so many garnishes. Anyway,
one of the examples was the activated charcoal powder. Yeah. The trend took on that everything was black, so everybody put black. So I was like, okay, that is great. How much do I put? So the other day, like long back, we were trying, let's do a black appam because it just looks nice because it's black. It doesn't enhance it. So I was like, okay, 1 spoon, 2 spoon, 3, like, damn it, 5 spoons in a portion. Like, what does it have? Will it be good for the customer? It looks great because it's black for some reason, but how much quantity should I add? What is permissible? What effects do I have? As a chef, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Well, I refuse to then serve it. But then who is watching? Anybody who's using anything into your food. So fresh food is used extensively, but it is very difficult to give food fresh. Like the menus would say wild mushrooms and fresh fish and fresh this, fresh that. Waiters se pucho, yeah, sir, fresh, abhi banaya. Nahi, baba, they don't understand fresh means. Is it frozen? Did it come fresh and chilled and cooked and served? So I think though basic concepts jo hote na, of keeping food honest is gone out of the window in most places, or some places, if I can say.
I could agree with you more, except that Bhuvnesh has just told me that Liz Truss has lost the vote and her time is over. So I will just conclude this brilliant session with a small couplet that I wrote for both of you. Okay, and if you enjoy it, and if you don't like it, just keep your mouth shut. Don't. हाले दिल सुनाने के काबिल ये किस्सा है दावत और मेहमान नवाजी के काबिल बरसों से मुकम्मिल वो ख्वान इसके जो आज भी खिलाने और खिलवाने के काबिल क्या गजब है क्या अदब है खूबसूरत ये सफर है हाल दिल विनीत कुणाल के खाने को सुनाने के काबिल. On that very
बहुत-बहुत
happy
शुक्रिया.
note, please give both these gentlemen and the Rashima behind Vineet somewhere. Hi Rashima. All right, a very big hand. Thank you.